Warm greetings to Engineer Professor Dr. Yao Ho Guang, Vice President of Internationalization and Academic Development of University Tunku Abdul Rahman, Dr. Stephen Lim, Chairperson of the Center of Photonics and Advanced Materials Research, Dr. Kwan Seng Hao, Chair of the International Symposium of Resilience 2021, distinguished guests, speakers, and all participants. Welcome to the International Symposium of Resilience 2021 with its theme Research Directions and Job Prospects in Engineering and Science After COVID. This symposium is specially brought to you by the Center of Photonics and Advanced Materials Research, University Tunku Abdul Rahman, Malaysia. We are privileged to have with us professionals and experts from across 4 continents to provide us some insights on how to rise above challenges post-COVID in our 2-day symposium. I'm Dr. Karen Wong, and together with Dr. Stephen Lim, we are the session chairs for this symposium. To start off our event, we would like to invite Dr. Kwan Seng Hao, Chair of Resilience 2021, for his welcoming speech.
Thank you very much, Dr. Karen. Welcome to Resilience 2021. As you know, the next decade ahead of us will be quite different from what we already know. Drastic changes are already taking place in the world that we live in, especially the way we work and also the way our economy is structured. The very fabric of our society is changing as we speak. Baby boomers and Generation X have worked very hard and they could retire to large savings and retirement funds due to the big changes in property prices and salary throughout their time. However, the current generation does not have this luxury. Wages have remained constant. Living costs are rising everywhere in the world as we speak, right? So when we have COVID coming last year, it really impacted societies everywhere. These trends of low wages and high living costs have also accelerated. So under these challenging times, one trait or one character stands out in the midst of the great changes that we're going through, right? And that trait is the ability to endure and to thrive under difficult and challenging times. A trait otherwise known as resilience, which is what this event is named after. So Resilience 2021 is really about a series of talks that explore changes that COVID brought about in the fields of engineering and science, and showcases the adaptation efforts by professionals everywhere around the world, from the Americas, North America, South America, to Europe and Asia. We have professionals introducing you into the heart of what makes man triumph in the face of challenge and setbacks, which is our ability to assess our surroundings and also to implement changes to change our destiny. Our audience, I hope, will learn about many things from experts in their fields about issues that are needed to confront the new reality and the new norm that we live in, from the classroom to the office, to the laboratory, hospital, emergency room, and beyond. So I would like to thank all the speakers who've agreed to speak today for sharing their valuable experiences. I'd also like to thank all the committee members who have worked hard to make this event successful. I hope Resilience 2021 will be very beneficial to you and that you may apply all these lessons to bring your career to greater heights. Thank you very much. I pass the mic back to you, Dr. Karen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kwan, for the warm welcome. Next, we would like to invite the distinguished Engineer Professor Dr. Yao Ho Guang, Vice President of University Tunku Abdul Rahman, Malaysia, to grace our events with his opening speech. Let us welcome Professor Yao. Prof. Yao.
Thank you, Karen.
Prof. Yao, you are muted.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you, Karen. I think distinguished guests, and organizing committees, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of the President of Utah, Professor Yu Hong Tat, I'm pleased to welcome esteemed speakers, presenters, distinguished partners, and participants to this International Symposium on Resilience. Thank you all for your support and participation. And most importantly, to the esteemed speakers, thank you for sharing your experience and expertise with participants of these symposiums. Besides showcasing the engineering and science research works of the participating international universities, this symposium will also discuss the impact caused by the COVID-19 pandemic on R&D projects and job opportunities, and how we can move forward together in the right directions to overcome the setbacks. Many questions on R&D, funding, resources, partnerships, vocations, and the future direction of studies and graduates in engineering and science need answers. The COVID-19 pandemic has also introduced an unprecedented amount of uncertainties across many aspects of day-to-day living, from battling spreading infections and health risks to wide-ranging socio-economical challenges. Income polarizations, lessening job opportunities, and the increasing reliance on digitalizations for processes that impacts smaller businesses. With current focus on post-pandemic business recovery, e-commerce activities, retraining of staff, redeployments of resources, and reconnecting lost business contacts, how can engineering and science contribute in the post-pandemic era of future developments, business and environmental sustainabilities? How can we help to create more jobs for engineering and science graduates? How can we train our graduates to be more resilient, to weather and navigate future challenges? How can we set up a resilience ecosystem at the universities and workplace for staff and students? How do we build resilient mindsets? These are questions that hopefully this symposium will be one of the platforms for universities and the industry to come together to brainstorm and interact for stimulative discussions for a positive way forwards into the next decades. I would like to thank the esteemed speakers from 4 continents and the 6 countries of Canada, Sweden, Malaysia, Thailand, China, and Chile. We are indeed honored to have these experts and academics participate to share their expertise and research findings with the participants. We look forward to an insightful and educational overall experience at the symposium. The most important lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic is the importance of working together on problems that affect the entire human race. We are much stronger, united, and our joint resilience will help us adapt and thrive in the new world of post-COVID. Therefore, I hope that this symposium will be a dynamic learning experience for all of us as we put our heads together, and I hope that knowledge gathered can be implemented in our daily life across all aspects of living, industry, and field of studies. To end my speech, I thereby officiate the opening of this International Symposium on Resilience 2021, Research Directions and Job Prospects in Engineering and Science after COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Yao. We are very honored by your presence. We would now like to invite all distinguished guests, speakers, and participants to turn on your camera for a commemorative photo session. Please get ready.
Yeah, we hope everyone can cooperate to open up your webcam so that we can have a group photo together to commemorate this event. Thank you, everyone. So our technical team will take the photos for us, right? Dr. you are muted. Huh? Yeah, can you open your mic? Dr. you are muted. Yeah, can you unmute yourself? Okay, yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Again. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Stephen Lim. So we shall now start off with our main event today, which everyone has been anticipating for, the first series of talks by our 5 esteemed speakers. For the informations, every speaker will have 25 minutes for their presentations, followed by 5 minutes for Q&A. So as a reminder to all the audience, we are encouraged to post your questions for all our presenters in the chat box correspondingly, and our committee members or myself will read them out to the speakers for you, and the speakers can answer your questions accordingly. So feel free to post any related questions in the chat box. Okay, so we'll now go on to our first speaker. Our first speaker is a professor from UC Tunku Abdul Rahman, teaching the subjects of solar cell technology, renewable energy, solar thermal and photovoltaic engineering, optoelectronics, among others. So here, let me read some of a short of his biography. So Prof. Dr. Chong Kok Kiong received his Bachelor of Science first class degree from UC Malaya in 1998 and PhD in optical engineering degree from UC Technology in Malaysia back in 2002. He's also a Fulbright visiting scholar in Princeton University, USA for the period of September to December 2015. Currently, he's a full professor in UC Tunku Abdul Rahman, and he also a chartered engineer registered under the Engineering Council, United Kingdom, and a certified HRDF trainer. He has been actively involved in the solar cell material research, concentrator photovoltaic system, solar thermal and photovoltaic, and concentrating solar power. He has been honored to receive a Top Research Scientist Malaysia, TRSM 2018, Malaysia Torres Science Foundation, MTSF Science and Technology Award 2017, JCI 10 Young Outstanding Malaysians Award 2013, Fulbright Scholar Award 2015 to 16, Gold Awards in Pencipta 17, as well as Utah Research Excellence Award 2010 and Utah Innovations Excellence Award 2012 and 2014. To honor his contributions in academics and research, he has been elected as Fellow of Academy of Science Malaysia 2019, Fellow of ASEAN Academy of Engineering and Technology AAET 2018, Associate Fellow of AAET 2013, Global Young Academics 2014, Young Affiliates Fellow for the World Academy of Science 2011, Young Scientist Network Academy of Science Malaysia 2012, and Honorary Treasurer for Fulbright Alumni Association Malaysia. In addition, he was also invited to showcase research products in the main experience hall of Malaysia Pavilion, World Expo 2017 Astana, with the theme of Future Energy, which is the largest exhibition in the world. For the committee's service, he is appointed as subgroup leader of Working Group on Solar Photovoltaic System, CRIM, and Accreditation Committee members of Malaysian's Qualification Agency, MQA. He's also the associate editor of Frontiers in Energy Research, a Swiss-based open access publisher, part of the Nature Publishing Group's ISI Index journals with impact factor of 4.008. Besides, he's also appointed as a member of the editorial board in International Journals of Photo Energy, Hindawi, which is an ISI Index journals with impact factor 2.113 as well. So without further ado, let us welcome Prof. Dr. Chong Kok Kiong to deliver his talk on the new working environment in the post-COVID-19 pandemic. So Prof. Chong, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Stephen, for very kind introductions. Okay, I would like to share my screen first. I hope that you can see my share screen.
Yep, I can see.
Okay, all right. Oh, yeah. Okay, let me start. Okay. So today I try to share with you my experience and also how we are going to handle this new working environments. Okay, as we know that everybody knows COVID-19, this pandemic era is totally unprecedented. I think we never have this kind of experience before. Even we have global this kind of disease, similar disease, but not so widespread and not so long times. So it takes about more than 2 years, and there is still we don't see any possible this era will over. We still don't know, still uncertain. So we can say this is a new normal. Probably we have to stay for this for quite long times. That it could be very, very long time. We don't know. A lot of even medical experts also can't guarantee what will happen in the future. So our life basically have been affected, especially our lifestyle has been changed. Yeah. Overall, I think everybody has experienced. I think nobody have this kind of long-term lockdown before. Almost 2 years on and off, not only in Malaysia, but also in everywhere across the world. So adaptation is very important for us. We try to learn how to adapt. Everybody also have different way to adapt. So I believe that each of us have know how to adapt ourselves, although it's not perfect, but we are learning. It's a learning process, and it could continue learning from time to time. And the most important is the attitude must be very positive. And as we know that in my philosophy, I believe everybody also have this certain confidence that nothing is permanent. Yeah, nothing is permanent. And we believe that this era will pass. So before COVID-19, for myself, actually I spend most of time everywhere, keep traveling. Every years I travel overseas about at least 3 times for conference, for international meetings, at least 3 times per year. So I keep busy traveling. Even local conference also travel at least 2-3 times. So I can see that before COVID-19, most of time we spend outside traveling around. And also not only that, traveling to the work, also we travel a lot. We spend a lot of time driving from home to the workplace and then return home. But after COVID, I can say that most of time we are at home. Yeah? Other than we go out to buy food or certain important things we have to go out. And other than that, most of time we stay at home. So it's totally changed in terms of this kind of travel, in terms of traveling. Yeah. And in Chinese philosophy, we call Wei Ji. Wei means crisis in Chinese characters. Ji means opportunity. So sometimes something change could be a crisis, but if you know how to handle it, it become an opportunity for you so that you can do something different from what you have done, and it could see some new opportunity, and you can have new explorations. Yeah. So never let a good crisis just goes to waste, and it's a kind of new opportunity, like what mentioned by Winston Churchill. And as we know, one of the biggest entrepreneur in Malaysia. Last time we travel a lot. We know we actually engage with this AirAsia. Yeah. So we can see that entrepreneur, not only academic, everywhere is affected. All sectors are affected. So one of the famous one, Asia, are facing a very tough times, yeah, during this COVID area. And I would like to share with you this CEO, Tony Fernandez. I think he's one of the greatest, one of the great entrepreneur we know so far. And even this kind of pandemic era doesn't hit him down. He still wake up and he tried to transform the company instead of just air flight, but now he tried to transform the company into the e-commerce and also data and finance type of company. So he has done quite interesting and quite successful, and we can see that the company have done better and better. Yeah, even we observe currently their share also going up. Yeah, compared to during the COVID just started time. Yeah, so these are very good examples. See how this entrepreneur, they can do good things. Yeah. And for research, I think similar to entrepreneurs, I think researchers have also the same adventurous lifestyle. Yeah, because research itself is a problem solver. Actually, we are more resilient compared to most of the people because we are always challenging ourselves, and we are all the time we try to challenge a new problems. We try to apply research grant to solve new problems. Yeah, so I believe that for resilience in this kind of capability, researcher is and the entrepreneur are these are the career that can handle better. Yeah, but of course there are some problems when it starts. Yeah, we need time to settle down and think of what is the next steps that we can do under this kind of environment. So to share with all of you, okay, actually before pandemic also I also encounter in this research, we always encounter problems. We try to overcome the problems. One of my sharing is about this research as introduced by Dr. Stevens. My research is on solar energy. So when I start this project for my PhD study, actually I myself from the physics background, but I venture into the engineering. Yeah, basically I don't have idea about the mechanical engineering, especially design this part. So so I used to learn something that is totally out of my field. That is my kind of hobby. Yeah, I like to learn something new and explore something new. Hopefully we can see some opportunity there. When something that we are not familiar, probably we'll see something different from other people who are in the field for long times. And when I joined this research, last time when my supervisor explained to me the design that he formula that he derived, he can make all the mirror shade so that they can focus the sunlight at one point in a low cost. As we know that each mirror we need 2 motor to control so that we can direct the mirror to one point. But we have M row and M column, then we need 2 times Mn to control the motor focus at one point. But he said he got one formula that he can control, and he derived that formula, and he found that he can reduce from 2 mm to M plus N. So when he asked me to design this thing, I go through it, and I have a tough time in the design because my mechanical design is not as good as ordinary as a professional engineer. So I try to put everything together, and I think if you can simplify it, the design will be even better, easier for me. So I further reduced the simplify. I found there is a relationship between the first row and second row and third row. So I try to use my formula to derive although it's not perfect, but it's a good approximation. So I reduce from n plus n to this one we can just as a 1, as 1, because it's a ratio. So as long as I can handle the ratio, just increase multiple times. In the multiple times, say I can reduce to 3. Yeah, basically from what he did n plus n, I further reduce to 3 based on mathematical consideration. So finally, I manufacture based on this ratio. So you see there is only 1, 2, and 3. There are 3 only I can control, and we successfully focus it. So this is my first adventurous life in the research. So it made me more interested in the research, because I feel that I can challenge myself and successfully solve something very interesting. And second project I got when I joined Utah. This is a small project. When we got the funding is not so good, small amount, but we need to build a big solar concentrator system. And we use concrete to build, because concrete is the cheapest. After we calculate all the costs, we use a concrete because it's the cheapest way. Yeah. But after concrete, in Europe, they don't use concrete. In US, they use a steel column. The steel column is quite straight. Yeah. They can drill and fix it well, but they need the cost is much higher. Yeah, much higher. We want to save costs, that's why we use a concrete. But when we use concrete, there is a problem. When the concrete dry, the alignment will go away. It's no longer so straight. Yeah? It will distorted a bit, and this distortion caused us a lot of problems. We can't use a conventional formula, because conventional formula must make sure that the column is straight. In that case, we also face a tough time during that time. And to overcome this, we derived another new formula we call as a general formulas. So this formula allows the column to be any orientation, yeah? As long as I know how much is tilted. Yeah? So I use our own formulas. We derive our own formula. This allows us to have a 3-dimensional rhythms. So we do this design ourselves. We based on the first result, which is inaccurate. So we try to learn how it moves, and then we calculate what is the reason, what the formula we back calculation to get back these 3 parameters. Use some mathematics. So we solve this problem and we come out with a new formula, general sun tracking formula. And we build our own, we write our own programs, tracking programs, and we solve the problems. So these are the second problem we solve. Of course, not only these 2. There are many problems we have solved throughout the time. During the pandemic, before pandemics, we also solved a lot of problems. So I can say that as a researchers, actually we are more resilient. We can solve the problems. When problem come, we just learn the problems, and then we can solve the problem. So of course, for the pandemics, we have also advantages. Not only all disadvantages. Yeah, I must say that we have a lot of advantages. Like today, we have this kind of conference across the 4 continents that I don't think is possible without before pandemics, because we have to travel. Right? We have to travel from take a flight to come to Malaysia probably, and then we meet each other. So it will spend a lot of time, and some people cannot make it because of their pre-appointment and so on, pre-schedules. So it made possible now because we have online conference, and this is something very common nowadays. Okay, what are the advantages? What I can list down a few here. We reduce our traveling times. We can travel every day. I travel without COVID times, because I have to send my children to the school and then fetch them, and then I go to work and then come back. So I spend about 3 hours. I calculate about 3 hours per day just for the traveling. Yeah, just spend in the car. But now I can save these 3 hours. I can do more things. Yeah. And flexible work arrangements, that is definitely, I think we can have a video conferencing. So I only stay at home, I can make 3 appointments, 4 appointments per day, but last time I don't think it's possible. Probably I only can have 1 appointment or 2 appointments per day. So we have a flexible work arrangements. So these are the very efficient. Even the night time, we still can have a conference here, and after that I can go to the bed and sleep. Yeah, so it's very flexible. Online meeting and online class. Online meeting and online class also is initially I spent a lot of time to learn how to do online meetings and online class. Probably the first time I spent a lot of times and learn. And today I no need so much time, and even much better. And even I can immediately use YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. And can play some interesting videos, and I can edit some videos. So an electronic pen also even more efficient, yeah, compared to the marker pen, yeah. And online conference, as I mentioned, save time and cost. Now international conference just online, that is an advantage. So extra advantages still got, yeah, time saving for meeting with the students. Now I can meet many students per day, because everything is online, and easier and more flexible. Yeah, more efficient use during the online meetings. Yeah, if the meeting sometimes is talking a lot of things, yeah, not all is relevant to us, so we still can at the same time we still can do few things. Yeah, at the same time. Yeah. What are the drawbacks? Limited access to the lab. Yeah, this is definitely one of the key issue. Because our lab activity had to be stopped during this period. And sometimes we also meet the collaborators. Yeah, sometimes meeting is more effective. Yeah, we want to collaborate with someone, we meet them, we shake hand with them, and then have some tea with them, so that encourage the relationship. Yeah, improve the relationships is very important. And a few tests. You have to go to the site, do measurements, also quite important. So these are the affected. Yeah, definitely there are some affected. Yeah, physical conference also useful. Sometimes we travel to certain place, although spend a lot of times, but it's good for us to have refreshment, and then we have maybe visit some of the laboratory in overseas and learn from them. Can have a physical interactions, and also look at the physical labs. Yeah, all these are affected. Definitely there are drawbacks. Yeah, for a good working environments, of course, investment also important. Yeah, we also need to invest some for improving our working home environment at home. We need to have a good spend a lot of some time, yeah, to make arrangement inside the house, so that we can have a proper working environment. Yeah, that also important. And bandwidth, network also important. Laptop also, we need a good laptop. Compared to last time, we may not need so good laptop, but now we need a good laptop because we rely on it. And other accessories, electronic pen and so on. Yeah, all these are investment. I think we all of us have done this, just to share together. Focus. I focus on theoretical study because experiment are affected. Since experiment is affected, so why not we also spend some time, because I save 3 hours per day, so I can spend more time to learn new things. Yeah, this is a good part. We save the times, then we make use of the times. I will use the time to learn a lot of theoretical modeling and also simulations. I also learn a lot of new skills, programming skills, Python. Yeah, last time I didn't have time to learn Python. Now I have time, so I start to learn Python and AI. All these are very useful. I feel that is very useful and can improve my research in a different prospect. Yeah? In different direction. Yeah, more diversified. And self-upgrading to accommodate new normal, very important. As mentioned, Python, AI, these are very important. We can now go for online classes, also save a lot of time online classes. YouTube. Other than YouTube, also there are some classes very useful, webinar and online conference workshops and so on. So okay, looking back on something missing before pandemics. Okay, we have more time for thinking back and previous incomplete research work. Yeah, now also I come back, return back to some of the paper didn't complete last time. Didn't have incomplete because I didn't have enough time. So now I can go back and go through it. There are many things can do and think what is planning for the future and so on. And the last thing I would like to share, I think this is more important than the work. Yeah, our our life is not very long. Yeah, probably 100 years. If you can survive for 100 years, I think it's very good. Yeah. Other than work, I feel that there are more things are important. Yeah. Of course, our health is very important, and health is not only physical health; it's also mental health. Yeah. For mental health, we need something like meditation, or some people have their religions. Yeah. These are very important. We shouldn't ignore these things. Work are good, important, but also other things like physical health, like we can practice a lot of exercise. I do yoga because I cannot go outside. Yeah, last time I used to go for badminton, swimming, a lot of sports. Yeah, but now at home I only can do yoga because yoga is the only thing we can do at home. It doesn't occupy a big space, and it's very good for me. I feel that yeah. So I have a good timetable. Yeah, from work, then I have a rest and meditation, and then I have yoga. I can arrange my work very well because I have my control of the times. Yeah, so spend more time with family as well. Yeah, because we work at home, of course. Now we yeah. So that's all. Thank you for the everything for your listening. Thank you. So I'm pass the floor to our chairman.
Yep. Thanks again to Prof. Chong for his very insightful talk, especially regarding the advantages and also disadvantages that researchers have been facing during the pandemic era. I myself wholeheartedly agree with Prof. Chong. Basically, we researchers have the kind of resilience which enable us to actually adapt and survive in this pandemic era, despite the numerous challenges, the restrictions, limitations that impose to us on either on our research, equipments, facilities, etc. But we, as a researcher, we have the resilience to tie it through. So now we'd like to open the floor for the Q&A sessions. So again, here I'd like to urge the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to post your question in the chat box so that we can direct it to our speakers. Is there any questions on the floor? Maybe our audience needs some time to warm up. So Prof. Yong, maybe I'll start with simple questions. Yeah. So it's actually very interesting. I can see how you have adapted your research based on the challenges they are facing, especially in the early stages when you trying to set up the solar powered concentrators in our, I think in our main campus in Kampa, that areas. So there's a very insightful knowledge for us to learn. So, and also you have shared with us that during this pandemic era, basically you have learned all these online courses, especially on the Python and those artificial intelligence. Okay, because my background is in chemical engineering, so learning these programming skills like artificial intelligence and Python might seems a bit alien to me. So like, do you have any advice to those researchers from other background compared to us, that how we can actually also take this opportunity to learn this programming language and also the artificial intelligence?
Okay, thank you for the question. In fact, as mentioned before, I from the physics background. Physics background, basically, we don't have even programming skill, so strong programming skill. Actually, we learn programming also very low level. And actually, programming is you can learn as long as we want. There are many ways to learn. For me, I think I get this YouTube from my students. They share to me. They say you can go through this YouTube. It's a very good from basic. So I go through it, and I think it's quite easy to learn compared to last time when I first learned programming. I learned Visual C++. That is even tougher. Visual C++. I also get the books. I think nowadays people don't buy books because everything is an online source. I buy 21 days. Learn Visual C++ in 21 days. So I learned from there. I think nowadays even better. Yeah, last time we have to use a book. Now we can just directly go through the YouTube. YouTube even easier because it show very systematic step by step. Definitely you can handle it. I believe everybody can handle it. And Python, the language is simpler, much simpler. Yeah, very easy to learn. Yeah, I think no issue. Yeah.
Yep, thanks, Prof. Yong, for answer. I'm sure that like with the current Industrial 4.0 era, like everyone is talking about those big data programming and artificial intelligence. So learning these kind of skills, regardless of whatever your background is, I think can be an advantage in this post-pandemic eras, right? Yeah. Okay, so is there any other questions from the floor? Okay, yeah, we have a questions posted in the chat box, posted by Chuan Chuan. So thank you very much for your interesting presentations, Prof. Yong. What are the mental qualities that we should be equipped when we encountered problems in research, in jobs, or in our study, not just in this pandemic, but also in the future?
Mental quality. Oh. Okay. Okay, mental qualities. Okay. Very good questions. Okay, very good questions. Actually, the problem is when we face problems, we have two choices. One is we try to avoid the problems. Second, we have to face the problems. So the mental quality we must have very strong mental quality to face the problems. We try to solve the problems. For me, for my personal experience, when I face problems, I will not try to avoid. I will try to solve it. Yeah, although it's very hard, I know. There is no easy way to go away when we face problems. It will take time. Yeah, we have to go through the problems. The key part is we need to also sit down, and then have a relax ourselves first. Yeah, we don't not in hurry. Yeah, we don't think we can solve the problems just overnight. Yeah, some problem it will take time. And discussion. Another way is a discussion. A lot of sometimes we have inspiration from the discussion. Yeah? One way is I have a few good friends. Although they are not exactly similar field, but I throw the problem to them. So that sometimes when we throw problem to other people, ourselves looks like third party. Yeah, we are not inside that problems. Sometimes we want to solve problem, we cannot be inside the problems. If you are inside the problems, you cannot solve the problems. You must stand up. Yeah, you must stand one step backwards and then look at the problem. It's not your problems. You don't look at the problem as your problems. If you look at the problem as your problem, it will affect your thinking. That is, I think, one of the issue that I face. Another thing is you try to understand the problems, and you try to think of all the solution, and you still cannot get it. That is fine. Yeah, that is fine. And sometimes the solution is, I cannot say it it will come at the time that you desire. Yeah. For previous, I share with you 2 problem solving. This problem solved, then I was in the office. I sit down to do the design. I feel very depressed that time. How to solve it, and that is very tough. And I also argue with my supervisor, and after that I return home. I take a good rest, and then relax and do something else. I just ignore it, do something else. I don't want to care. And then and after that, the problem still come back, still in my head. It doesn't go away. Still in my thinking, it doesn't go away. But it's okay. I just let it. I know that is a problem. And I think sometimes if you put a lot of effort, you put a hard time into it, and I mean, you will get the answer. Yeah, the answer come in is not just like you sit down in the office and work out like that. It's just a click, and I take a shower. Yeah, when I take shower, hey, why not I think in the other way? I just ask myself, why not I think in the other way? So I sit down and then do work out in a different way, and suddenly I get problem solved. You know, it is a struggling process. You need to go through the struggling process. You cannot just take it easy. It doesn't put in any effort, and you hope that you can get the solution solved. Also not possible. You need to struggle, and then after struggle, you have to relax back a bit. And then you struggle a bit, and then you relax a bit. Struggle a bit, relax a bit. You need to go through this up and down process, and then until you get the solution. That is my experience from threading. Maybe different people have different way, but for me, I will not give up. I still struggle, but I will not also force myself too hard. And also I will, this is a cycling process. I use this method, quite effective for me most of the time. Yeah. Thank you.
Prof. Chong, Guan here.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your experiences. Very interesting and very eye-opening for me. I know your background is in fiber optics and physics, and you successfully ventured into renewable energy and solar energy, something that is quite different from your background. So maybe you can share with us how you managed to switch from one background and then adapt yourself into like a new field, and then find ways to be successful, not just in your field, but also in a field like solar energy. Maybe you can share with us a bit, Prof. Chong. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Guan, for the questions. Yeah, I myself is from the physics, and then I do a lot of astrophysics before I join the solar energy. And even I joined solar energy, initially I worked for solar furnace. Then after that, I changed a bit. That is sometimes we have to change because as I understand now, when we do research, for my self, I realized we cannot survive on one field for the whole career, especially for researchers. We can't do one research from our day one in academic until we retire, our retirement. It's impossible. I must say that it's impossible for any research field. You can do it for 30 years. Cannot. None of the research field can survive for 20 years. The research field is keep changing. So we have to keep changing. Yeah, the challenging part is how to change the field from one to another. It will be very challenging. We cannot be totally disintegrated also. We still must have a certain background, certain understanding. Like for me, you ask me to do bio, I don't think it's possible, but physics and engineering, there is still a connection. There is still a connection, and also need to spend times to learn. Yeah, of course, reading is one of the parts. That is initial part. That is initial part. Reading is an initial part, and after that, we have to look at what is something missing in that particular field. For me, I think one way is the easiest way. I think you have to go for sabbatical leave because if you spend you do have enough time to spend. I mean, you know, we also have a lot of commitments. Sometimes sabbatical will give you more times to sit down to learn new things. Sabbatical leave is very important. So I will suggest if you want to learn something very focused and really put your hands on. Don't just ask a student to do for you. If you ask the student to do for you, you never learn anything. So you have to enter the lab yourself, have to dirty your hand, have to put your effort in. You have to do everything on your own. Then you really can venture into a new field. So I would say that you need to take a sabbatical leave. If you teach and then you can do something, you can, but it will be very slow and not so effective. Of course, you also can do like part-time, something like part-time, because you are teaching and then you do research, so we consider part-time lah. Part-time, it will take longer to switch. Definitely you can't switch so fast, but you can do full-time like sabbatical, then it will be faster. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Yong, again for his insightful answers. So please let's thanks Prof. Chong for his talks to us today. So I think we can now move on to the second talk of today's, which will be on the title of a new integral discourse in mining towards global transformations and people powered, which will be delivered by two speakers, both Dr. Alessandro Navarra and Mr. Eli Abojot from McGill University, Canada. So allow me to read up some of their short biography for both of them. So Dr. Alessandro is an established researcher with over 10 years of experience as a professor of industrial engineering and mining engineering, including scientific and technical contributions to mine planning, mineral processing, geometallurgy, and extractive metallurgy, focusing on computational optimizations and operations research. His current interests include system integrations, artificial intelligence, and sustainability analysis. Dr. Alessandro has fostered an integrated approach to engineering education, featuring active learning methodologies, including group and peer-to-peer discourse. And a short biography from Mr. Eli. So Mr. Eli is a graduate researcher in global mine development and sustainability in the mining and materials engineering department at McGill University. He currently develops and facilitates training programs on system thinking and personal development for students and engineers in international academic institutions, using his background in coaching, SEC certified, to foster an experiential learning environment. Mr. Ali describes his approach to mining as integral and holistic, with a focus on human interiority and community development. He has presented his research findings in several conferences since 2015, including CIM, ISM SSE, and GOMIN. So without further ado, let's welcome both the speakers.
Oh, all right. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. I'm going to assume yes. Is that correct?
Yeah, you.
Okay, very good, very good. Ellie, if you could just make sure that we have this in the slideshow. Excellent. All right, before we really take off here, I just want to point out that even pre-COVID, even before this whole wave of change that we endured and that we continue to endure, the world was already changing. In fact, the engineering was changing, the society was changing, and so we have been propelled into a next stage of development. And maybe the way that things were before, we might have been, in a sense, falsely comforted, thinking that maybe only with a tangential acknowledgement that that our education and our preparation needed this adaptable dimension if we were going to be entering in a changing world. But now it's crystal clear. Now it's crystal clear that the world is changing, and we can take that as a benefit. The knowledge that it's changing, the opportunities that it brings shouldn't be ignored. All right, so in our talk today, integral disclosure in mining towards global transformation and people power. As mentioned before, we're sharing this talk. And let me mention here Ellie Abu Jaoud, who's become a leader in coaching and in gaining perspectives on developmental aspects and community relations within the mining context. So just go ahead, Ellie, click to the next slide. Ellie's going to be doing a first part of this presentation, and I'm going to continue towards the end.
Thank you, Dr. Navarro, for this.
Oh, wait, one more thing I want to mention. In our slides here, we have a lot of information that describes the approach that we've been developing. They're somewhat dense, but we're going to arrange for these slides to be shared with those in the audience. All right, so try to see in these slides what appeals to you, but also know that we'll be sharing this afterwards. All right, thanks. Go ahead, Ali.
Thank you, Dr. Alessandro. Thank you for this introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, whatever you are in the world. It's a big pleasure being here presenting this presentation on integral discourse for mining. And I want to start by saying that this presentation, yes, it's oriented towards mining, but it can be applicable as well to health and safety management in the context of COVID, where we can start reflecting, well, how can we make our measures more integral, more inclusive, more empathic, more democratic? And this pandemic made people question, well, where is my voice in this? Does my voice matter? But I want to start by reminding you that, yes, you have the power to make a change, and you have the will and strength to make a difference in your environment and in your community. So never underestimate that power. So to start this presentation, it's divided in 3 parts. I will start by introducing what transformational mind development is in the context of an integral discourse. So the first part is very philosophical. It's really introducing the major concepts. But in the second part, I turn this philosophical idea into a clear methodology that engineers and scholars can use in the context of mind development and resource development. And in the last part, we will speak how can we get into more localized process and filter that information into actual operations and automation in the mining industry. So what is an integral approach? The word integral might be new to many of you. Well, integral, one way to relate integral, a big synonym, would be holistic. And one way to describe holistic would be transdisciplinarity. And transdisciplinary is really a word to describe a theory of everything. Is all research discipline interconnected as one whole? And transdisciplinarity can be seen as a way of being in awareness, a way of being, personal development, a way of relating with other people, relationality and connection, and also personal behaviors and actions. So it's also a scientific discipline. And transdisciplinary is becoming more and more common in universities around the world because we're realizing that if we really want to solve problems, then we cannot just focus on one discipline. We need the collaboration of different types of scholars that can come together and solve solutions together. And in this research, you will see the context of transdisciplinary pretty obviously because it's not just about engineering, but we also integrate psychological science and social science into one methodology. And one thing I want to add as well is that in order to really have a transdisciplinary approach, we need systems thinking. And systems thinking is recognizing that we're all part of systems and systems interconnect. And on the right, you can see the different type of system that exists, but they're all part of one meta system, which is eco-psychosocial in nature. Now, what is the ground for global transformation? One way I can describe or define transformation is an expansion of awareness and a deepening of context. But to start of what is the foundation's transformation, it's about awareness. We experience the world through awareness. Just take the example of you right now, sitting in the room watching this computer. Ask yourself, what is the source of my awareness? What is the source of my consciousness in this present moment? You will see that it's pretty undifferentiated. If you really get into a meditative environment, for example, you will see that the source of consciousness is not something you can really localize or point out. But consciousness can be differentiated into 3 types of awareness. For example, right now, you can feel your physical body, you feel physical sensation, you also have an interiority, you feel emotions, you feel thoughts, etc. But there's also your external environment, which is the its. So the internal environment is the I, and the external environment is the its. And these are the physical objects, the physical environment. And finally, there's the we. This is the relationality right now. You're having a connection with people around the world. So we're always experiencing these 3 types of awareness, the I, the its, and the we. So in order to really get into the concept of transformation and foster it globally, then we have to recognize that our source of experience is awareness. And again, this awareness is part of a geospatial context, space, cosmos, and Earth. Our planet is part of a solar system, which is part of a galaxy, and it doesn't exist independently from the solar system. Whatever happens in the positioning of the planet has a direct influence on, for example, the geomagnetism of the planet, of the Earth, which also affect our social culture and events. And this context can be divided into 3 categories: eco-social, psychosocial, and existential. Now, to make this more concrete, this topic of awareness and context, well, I created a model called an archetypal model. And the archetypes are basically the patterns and the probabilities and the configuration that form the basis of what reality is. And we categorize these archetypes into 3 directions: environmental archetypes, social archetypes, and human archetypes. Again, this is a representation of what you've seen in the previous slide, but what I want to point out here is that it's part of a dynamism, it's part of a system, and the system grows, the system evolves. And systems are pretty heterogeneous, they're pretty malleable, pretty fluid. They're not as rigid as we think they are. And if we want to turn this archetypal model into clear categories, then on the right, you can see categories of sustainability ranging from ecological to existential. So sustainability is not just about the environment, it's not just about the psychology, but there's so many different aspects, so many facets to sustainability. And now talking about discourse and resource development. Well, again, sustainability is not just part of one single group. Sustainability evolves. And our perception of sustainability evolves as well over ages and over decades. And there's a clear relationship between psychological development and discourse and resource management. Because remember, we experience the world through awareness, we experience the world through psyche. And all this kind of information that we're experiencing right now passes through our own minds and then through our own inner filter. So based on the level of psychological development we're at, and it doesn't mean that I'm not trying to here to box someone in one category. We can all experience different categories simultaneously. But predominantly, we sometimes operate from one single category. And depending on this category, well, it will determine the type of discourse we're inhabiting and we're embodying, not only individually, but also collectively. And I really want to give credit to Ken Wilber, who's a transpersonal psychologist who developed this hierarchy of psychological development. And also for each discourse, there's psychic conditions, social conditions, and ecological conditions. And this whole concept of psychological development is not new. There's hundreds of models, development models in psychology. A few of them by Oshashka, the different types of worldviews, and also the hierarchy of needs by Maslow, which some of you might be familiar, the type of needs that we're aiming for as human beings. So if we're aiming for physical safety and survival, or if we're aiming for self-actualization, it will kind of change the actions and the behaviors that we're embodying in the context of resource development. Now, what is transformational mining? So we've seen what integral approach is. We've seen what is the foundation of global transformation. And we've also talked about the holistic approach to sustainability and discourses. Now, transformational mining. The goal of mining in the context of transformation is really to empower and to fulfill people and communities across the planet. So a good approach would be to look at the local context and impacts, understand what are the regional dynamics, and then build a vision. Because without vision, then how do you know your direction? And I feel right now in resource development paradigms, there's a lack of vision. We don't know necessarily where we're heading. And when we're looking at the current context of the pandemic, the current context of the world, do we really have a clear vision of where we're heading as a society and where we're heading as human beings? So we need a vision, but that vision is initiated and built by local people and local community. And that's what fosters empowerment. The idea that people have the power to make decisions and have the voice. And the first, so here in transformational mining, well, there's a transactional approach, but the last approach is transformational, which looks at the systems and also existential factors. And on the top and the bottom right, that's a model by IAP2. It's a spectrum of public participation. Well, instead of just informing and consulting local communities in the context of development, what if we can just empower them? They can be the drivers and they can be the initiators of local change. Now, part two, about the methodology. Well, we spoke about the philosophy, we spoke about the idea. How can we turn that into a clear methodology, a holistic and integral methodology, which is about deepening context and expanding awareness? And first of all, as I said, it's about assessing the geospatial context. Second of all, companies can ask, well, who are the mining companies present in a region and how can we foster collaboration with them and foster circularity? Third, it's about training stakeholders in the mining industry. Well, if you want to consult with communities, then you have to have the intellectual and also empathic capacity to able to communicate. And this is where the concept of coaching comes to. Fourth, social licensing, while communicating with local community and also helping them foster a vision, a holistic vision and sustainable vision for the future. Fifth, well, now that we know what the community needs, we know their dynamics, we know how the regional dynamics as well. Well, what are the impacts of development? The environment, social, and psychological impacts. And finally, number 6, well, this is where we can actually start designing our mine and also planning for aesthetics and optimization, and also understand, well, what is the role of automation in that community, in that region? And the methodology is also within a geospatial context that range from mine site to global, and also within a time horizon. Remember that mining companies, mining operation can last for decades. And in 30, 40 years, society will change, climate will change. So how will the mining industry adapt and be more inclusive to those changes that can be unforeseeable? And for the next slides, I will go, just to go back, I will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to really get to show you our approach, our unique approach to each of one. But for each of these points, methodologies have already been developed. So this is a meta methodology. Methodology was a capital M. So for each point, we will discuss, well, what could be like an integral and what could be a holistic component to these. Now for this geospatial context and archetypes, if we really want to understand and study the dynamics of a region, well, this is an archetypal research classification. It aims to really put on the table, well, what are the patterns? What are the configurations that exist and form part of reality? And they're divided into 3 categories: environment, society, and human. And in total, this research identified over 350 optimization factors. And within each of these optimization factors, there's even more factors. So it's a very complex and very comprehensive model. But the whole context of archetype is not new. It's a concept that has been used in sustainability analysis and sustainability studies. As you can see by the work by Eddie in 2005, he developed a model which is a stratified ecosystem models, which shows this flow between cosmology, between planetary science, and between mathematical and engineering science as well. And at the bottom, you can see, well, if you want to turn this archetypal model into concrete optimization factors, well, these are just a few examples. Let's say you can study the demographics of a region, the cultures, the resource and reserves, their major infrastructures, the communities, public services, etc. And there's also opportunities for circular economy in a region. Well, if a mining company wants to develop and produce resources, well, they need to start collaborating with other companies that are present in their region to really foster collaboration and also foster a green approach to sustainability. And a circular economy model seeks to create abundance. It's all about reusing, repairing, and recycling. So how can we reduce the footprint on the environment by recycling what we already have? And part of a circular approach is to understand, well, what are the resources used in one community? So if a mining operation is located near a community, then it's important to understand, well, what does the community needs to actualize and to sustain itself? Material resources and energy resources, but there's also human resources and social resources. And on the right, we will share the slides, so we will have an opportunity to read them one by one on your own. But it's really just a methodology within the circular economy concept of how we can foster that aspect in regions and communities. Now about experiential and awareness training. Well, before we dive into social licensing with Dr. Navarra, well, we need to start training stakeholders to become more inclusive and more empathic. Because the role of mining stakeholders is not just as expert consultant. We don't just provide technical expertise. We also have to communicate with communities to understand what are their needs and what are their aspirations and visions. So we need very good communication skills in order to do so. And the foundation of a transformational training strategy is consisted of 4 elements: effective engagement, emotional intelligence, systems thinking, and conflict resolution. And again, all of these focus are within they can also be called systems thinking skills. So there's systems thinking within systems thinking. And on the right, these are the competencies of coaches, which are drafted by the International Coach Federation. So there's 11 competencies, as you can see: active listening, powerful questioning, direct communication, designing actions. So the role of coaches is not to provide expertise, it's not to say to people or communities how they should live or how they should conduct themselves. It's really coming with an open-ended approach and letting them foster their potential through their own voice. So it's all about self-expression. And the concept of coaching has already been applied in the mining industry, and their benefits have been proven and demonstrated for health and safety management and transformational leadership. Now I will pass on for Alex and Navarra to speak about social licensing, building a shared vision. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. One of the questions that comes up, especially when crossing disciplines related to the mining industry, one question is what on earth do we mean by sustainable mining? And we're talking about non-renewable resources in general. And so focusing on at a localized scale what the actions of a mine will be. The mine could run as long as 40 years. It could run as short as a few years. It could be an unsuccessful attempt at establishing a mine, and the project could be done within a year. But what exactly do we mean by sustainable in this case? How do we limit this in appropriate scope? And what we'd say is this: is the sustainability analysis of mining really is an accountability for the net contributions to the well-being of humans and ecosystems. And that's a net contribution. So consider for a second what it should mean for humans. What should this mean for humans? So this is where we get into social licensing. And if the perception is that it's a removal of a non-renewable resource that would not be able to be reobtained, that is unacceptable to potential stakeholders unless they have some type of a return. And often that is related to modernization, is related to incoming resources, things like a new power plant that will also power the local hospital. And so it has to be related to rising standards of living, has to be related to empowered people. Otherwise, the project is on shaky grounds. And as we put forward here, a holistic methodology or also integral methodology, but towards authentic people power. This means ground up. That's the most convincing, you might call it meta metric of how stable a project can be. Is there buy-in? Are people believing in this project? And by not addressing the sociological and indeed the public perception of what the project is, we're on shaky ground. And this comes from hard-learned experiences within the mining industry, right? But it applies to other developments of all kinds. And so this here is something we can carry forward into industrial development in all sense. And development is what we need now in a new era. A new era needs development in response to the new conditions. So go ahead, Ellie, to the next slide. All right, now within a development, within a change in paradigm like we've been experiencing, there is bound to be conflicts, and it's really at the holistic level that we can mitigate and we can balance conflicts, and within the mining context, directly companies and community. This is where there's potential conflict, but that's where there's potential harmony. That's where there's potential opportunities, and the realization that there could be net benefit, there could be, again, stakeholders, there could be construction, and in accordance with the values of the local community, of the stakeholders. Right. Just speaking from the Canadian context, we know that in the northern regions, it's often been mining development that has brought infrastructure, that has brought opportunities. But done in an irresponsible way is where problems can arise. And so what does it mean to be responsible or irresponsible? It has to be with respect to what are the local values, what are the people that are involved in, and the new opportunities that can be brought to them. So when we think about this in a holistic way, you know, and if we make a connection to harder sciences and optimization, there's a jump between the hard metrics and what are the outcomes, right? And that's what we mean by holistic. We say we don't know the direct connection between the psychological risks or the social risks between one approach to community development or another approach. But we know that those exist, and we don't know at what point a threshold is crossed, at which point the viability of a project or initiative comes into contact. And you know, it can't be a situation where conflicts are being avoided, because conflicts being avoided, those are lost opportunities at the same time as fostering, as a hotspots for risks. So next slide. Right now, formulating objectives here at a holistic level, we have to understand the values at the ground level stakeholders, and that means those that will be on the ground, those that ostensibly should be benefiting from development. You know, and we did this quite deliberately in considering pillars of this sort. People that have been exposed to sustainability analysis understand the three pillars: environmental, social, economic. Now, the economic aspects are very clear in the context of industrial development. And so having the pillars formulated in that sense tends to bias the process. And we're putting emphasis here on the human aspect, giving it its own pillar. And from our reviews of considering different metrics, different objectives, we listed 15 of each, and considering economic from this perspective as being under an umbrella of socioeconomic, and then indeed under a broader umbrella of social, this is where we start to prioritize different objectives and different opportunities that can come along with that. And what we have listed here is just typical concerns that come up within the discourse towards building the holistic bedrock for a successful community, a multi-decade investment, but throughout with a vision towards the long term, what will be the net benefit to the well-being of humans and indeed of ecosystems. All right, so go ahead to the next slide, Ellie. So this is where we start to think about how we should be even conceiving about which metrics we should be optimizing towards. Now, and speaking as a mathematician and speaking as an expert in quantitative methods, I would say that when we're able to apply the quantitative methods as much as possible, what we're really doing is filtering out the manageable risks and then leaving the opportunity to tackle the less manageable risks, the less quantifiable risks. And at the point of how is this mine going to operate? For example, how is the mine going to operate here with response to community when it's barely going to hire anybody. When the way to do this now is going to be with automated machine remote control and very few workers, but workers that are relatively higher skilled. And if there isn't the accountability to what the net return is, the net benefit to humans and ostensibly the net benefit to ecosystems, this is where there's going to be major problems, and even the conception of how a mine should operate and should indeed be developed. We're looking at it from a strategic level and an integrated level down to the way the mine can run. So yeah, go to the next slide. Yeah. So we're dealing with the new age, and it's crystal clear now that remote control of mines, of equipment here can open up new worlds. What does it mean when we have so-called resource scarcity, but we can have asteroids here that single-handedly have more resources within them that would completely upend our concept of what is an economics. What is an economics when there is no scarcity? Certainly when there is no resource scarcity. The projects that it takes to bring now extraterrestrial resource to Earth are actually tangible, and as an idea, as a methodology, they're no more different than engineering projects in general, multi-phase engineering projects. Yeah, we could spend $1,000 to figure out whether or not we should spend $10,000 to then figure out whether or not we should spend several million to then figure out whether or not we should spend a few billion, here going up in orders of magnitude, but it's the same concept. Do we then spend billions to figure out whether or not we should spend trillions? It's the same idea. It's the same idea, and this is something that's going to change society. It's going to change the role of engineers. It's going to change the role of, say, those who consider the societal impacts of development. I think we're taking up a little bit too much time, so I think go ahead, Ali. And let's finish our presentation to get to discussion. So.
Thank you, Dr. Navarro. So really, to finish this conversation and discussion, if we really want to implement social change in the world, well, it has to start in the psyche and mind of individuals, but we need strong ethics to do so. So for any types of development, or let's say health and safety management in the context of COVID, what you can ask yourself to make sure that are these ethical decisions, are these ethical measures? Well, are they inclusive? Are they empowering? Are they open to critical thinking? Are they transparent? And are they socially oriented? And finally, are they humanistic? And strong ethics in the context of academia is reflected towards research that is oriented towards making a change in society and communities. So it's not just a contract based, it's not just a funded type of research by corporations and by companies, but it's also independent research that aims to make positive contributions to communities and local people. So it's all about self-empowerment. It's all about empowering people, empowering the globe, and heading toward global transformation. And to end this presentation, I'd like to read this quote by Ken Wilber. Development fundamentally means an enlarging and expanding of one horizons, a growth of one boundaries, outwardly in perspective and inwardly in depth. Thank you very much for listening. Now we open the floor for questions, and also if you want to contact us, feel free to send us an email. There was a lot of content in this presentation. It's really a reflection of also my passion and creativity in teaching. So feel free to contact us, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, and we should be distributing the slide. By the way, the file is massive, so we need like I don't know what, a Dropbox or something, but we'll leave that to the organizers to tell us what the best way for us to transmit this material is.
Yep, sure. Thanks again to Dr. Alessandro and Mr. Ali for their such an insightful information pertaining especially to the holistic approach in the mining field. So we'll of course share the slides from them to our participants later on. So now I'd like to open to the floor to question and answer. You have any questions you can ask? Yep. So we have our first question from Tan Wei Yang. So thank you for the sharing from both presenters. Has COVID pandemic brought any changes or impacts to the holistic methodology for the mining industry? Can you share one examples?
Yeah, I can. What I've seen is that access to mine sites is very restricted now because the implication of an individual bringing a disease basically is now say the risk of shutting down a mine due to then the systemic quarantine is something that has limited access and has favored actually remote control. And that's not a bad thing from the point of view of professionals in the mining industry. It's caused a reorientation. Actually, it's changed the mining industry.
I'd like to maybe add that also this work has been initiated before the pandemic, but I feel the pandemic really just motivated me and encouraged me more to really focus this research on people power, because what we're experiencing today in the pandemic, I mean, you know the phrase, history repeats itself. So we see this kind of like, I would say polarization that exists in our current society. And people have been wondering, well, how can I feel empowered in the midst of everything happening? Where is my voice in this? Because decisions have been made for the people, but how can people be more involved into making those decisions and initiating those measures? So it's not just imposed, but it's also self-initiated. And we also have to transcend forms of segregation, forms of marginalization. So how can we all connect and love each other as a community? So right now we can see this kind of polarization, but I feel this type of work can really be solidifying and unifying communities and people together from all different backgrounds.
Okay, thanks. So we have our next questions from Dr. Jeffrina. So a very interesting and comprehensive research. So the question is, how long did this research take?
You know, Ali, I think you could answer this better, but I would just like to add a little nuance onto that question, is to say that it's a spectrum. I mean, it's an accumulation of work. It's more of an interest here, and so I think the example to answer the question from Jazrina is to say, like, take a part of what's concrete in this presentation and think about how long it took to formulate that. What do you think, Ellie?
Definitely, I would say years and years, because the real work here is a personal work, a personal development type of work. And this is the hardest work that someone can face, you know, facing their own challenges, facing their own perception, facing their own worldviews, so they can become more expansive. So this research is an accumulation of insights and experience that happen over the years, and it requires a great understanding of how systems functions. So it came with years and years of deep introspection and deep personal realization. But the actual academic context of this research, I would say 2 to 3 years. And it started as me doing mindfulness trainings for mining companies for fly-in fly-out workers and really improving the well-being of stakeholders in remote regions. But then I asked myself, well, how can we turn this into a methodology? How can we turn this into an archetypal model that is not just about psychology, but it's also about society and environment, because they're all interrelated. And so now this is what the research has come to, and it's still a research and development. And we look forward to see where this is going to head in the future, and how can we turn this into practical consulting so that governments around the world can actually be more inclusive and be more democratic in general.
Yeah, I could add something to that. Like, if we look at this as like one cell of advancement, say, and not such a thing could really be easily defined, but for example, say reading a book that actually influences our thinking takes a certain amount of time, but then some reflection is to say, all right, for example, being exposed to the notion of archetypes, right? Now, being exposed to the notion of archetypes on top of having studied sustainability analysis, on top of having studied various forms of engineering. Okay, so there's an increment that happens after you read the book, but then you say, what's my response to this book, given that I'm bringing in packages here that are clearly different than where the author was coming from? So where's the progress that happens from that integration? Sometimes that turns into thinking of a new table that should be made that documents the interaction between factors that maybe people have thought about, but isn't well shared. Yeah, I think there's a question here from Jazrina.
Hi. Jasrina here. Nice to meet you, Dr. Nawara and Ellie. I was just looking at the whole picture. It has a lot of different dimensions, as you mentioned, multidisciplinary, and yeah, it's definitely going to take a long time. But you did mention something about coaching. You did mention something about systems thinking. You also, just now, I think Dr. Nawara mentioned about taking it to governments and looking at things, right? I was wondering if perhaps you would want to look at including action research as a methodology, because that would mean that you would create questions to answer your problems. So that would actually could be parked under coaching, it could be parked under systems thinking. It also can help the perspective of economics, probably your politics, where I saw some bits of it. I didn't really get to see entirely. So that, maybe you want to consider that. Is just my suggestion. That's all. Thank you. Good luck.
Sure. Can I add something for this?
Sure.
Great suggestion, and I want to give credit as well to Oshashka, who wrote this book called Developing the Self, Developing the Sustainability, and she spoke about action research. But a way to make action research more inclusive would be to add the introspective dimension to it. So it's really aimed at looking at the interiority of people. It's so the thing about previous approaches with action research, it's yes, it aims at collaboration, it aims at participation, but the new dimension that we're trying to add to that is this whole dimension of introspection, of interiority. Well, now we're looking at the psychological aspect of human beings. But this is a great suggestion, and we're definitely going to look into it. So thank you for this great insight.
Thank you.
I like focusing things on say the action oriented and then even say along with that the goal oriented and it's better to look at it that way rather than fixing on metrics, because we need to think about where these metrics come from, and it's methodology with a capital M, say the notion of methodology that brings us there.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Dr. Nawara, and also Mr. Ali. We actually have another question from Ms. Wong Wan Ying that I posted in the chat. I think due to time constraint, we have to move on to our next speaker. So I think our speakers can reply to you personally later on. Okay. So thanks, Dr. Nawara and Mr. Ali. Thank you. So our next speakers will be none other than Dr. Ho Chun Long from Southern University of Science and Technology, China, and he's going to present on the title of Augmentations of Teaching Methods in SASTEC during the COVID-19 pandemic. So here is a short biography of Dr. Ho. So Dr. Ho Chun Long is a Malaysian-born assistant professor under the Department of Biomedical Engineering at the Southern University of Science and Technology, SASTEC. So his research primarily focuses on synthetic biology, protein engineering, and microbiome engineering to address various health, industrial, and environmental issues. So without further ado, let's welcome the talks by Dr. Ho.
Okay, I think there is a video to be played. I actually made a recording of this particular video itself. So, yeah, thanks. Good evening, everyone, or good morning, evening, wherever you are. My name is Ho Chun Long. I'm a faculty member from the Southern University of Science and Technology in China, from the Department of Biomedical Engineering, and I'm honored to be given an opportunity to share my experience of augmentation of teaching methods in SASTEC during this COVID-19 pandemic outbreak back in late 2019 to early 2020. So before I do begin, let me give you a brief introduction of the university itself. We are situated in Shenzhen City, which is actually in the Guangdong province, somewhere south of China itself, southeastern side of the in China itself. So we are actually situated right in the center of a few major cities, such as Hong Kong, Macau, as well as Guangzhou and Guangxi which makes us places in a rather, how do we say, busy location where people actually transverse and move around quite often. And because of that itself, we are actually very well positioned, and the university itself have been actually ranked as one of the top, actually the top young university in China, and the 26th ranking in the world for young universities. If you ever have a chance to actually come and visit, I would really be more than happy to bring you around and have a visit of Shenzhen city itself. So it's a nice place, and the climate is very much like Malaysia and Singapore, where it's actually relatively warm and humid during the summer, and very cool. It's almost like Genting during winter itself. So the campus itself has a total of 30 departments and centers, and we actually cater, despite having that many departments, we actually cater to a rather niche group of students that is about 7,500 students, give and take. Almost half of it is actually undergraduates, and the other half is actually, close to half, is actually postgraduate students. So that includes masters as well as PhD students as well. For the faculty members, we have 1,300 over faculty members as of last year. And it is actually more of the 1:3, 1:5 ratio of student to supervisor contact. So that gives students a good chance for interacting as well as learning hands-on directly from the supervisor. But the thing here is that given the number of people who are actually studying and working in the university, let's not forget that these are just the core members. We are not looking at the administration staff, we are not looking at the logistics staff, as well as the people who actually, the caretakers of the university itself. The thing is that the total number of people who are living on campus and working in campus itself is actually way much above 10,000 over people in a densely populated region. So in that extent itself, for the safety of the students, it's actually most important that stringent methods and also stringent precautions are actually taken to ensure the students' safety. And that is what we have adopted and we have tried to actually achieve during the pandemic itself. So in this short sharing, I would like to actually share the different type of approaches which we have done during the pandemic outbreak itself, where we look at the undergraduate education and the graduate education as well. So we separate this into two different entities. So the first, for undergraduate, we have back in the pandemic actually manifested itself at the end of 2019, and it hit full-fledged in early 2020. But that alone didn't hamper the class or the lessons which the students partake. So in 20th February 2020, the very first online lesson was broadcasted during the spring semester of that particular year. And this actually paved the road for students to actually learn and interact via online lectures itself. And because of this, previously we actually had an agency to actually facilitate the online learning courses, but which is called the UNESCO International Center for Higher Education Innovation, and where they have the MOOC, or the Massive Open Online courses, which allows students to actually study online as well as to participate directly. And it was because of the pandemic itself that they took center stage to facilitate the education as well as the learning process of the students over this duration of time. And it is we can actually see that their requirements actually have expanded, so much so that they have their own complete new set of office, which was unveiled back in December 2020, indicating how much the students actually require such a service. So on top of which, there is actually a feedback mechanism to which students can share or comment about how the teaching was being conducted. So both scholars and students and lecturers, TAs, are actually able to share their opinion on how to improve the lectures further, because sometimes different students might have different needs when it comes to teaching, and through this platform of sharing, we actually learn and also improve on the methods of actually teaching them better. So let me show you a few examples of what I've done for myself. I teach synthetic biology to my grad students, as well as systems biology to my undergrads. So during the spring semester, I actually taught synthetic biology, as you can see over here. This is what's going on in the lecture, and we also have the personal, presentation as well as assignments which have been done. As you can see over here, given by one of my students, Liu Zhao, where he shared his report as well as his, his compiled literature review on a particular subject of interest. In this case, if I'm not mistaken, he was sharing about genetic engineering on microbial cells itself. So until May 11th, 2020, the cases in China has observed a steep decline, and thus traveling was actually resumed to a certain degree, and ultimately the university was opened back for local students, and classes resumed as per usual, where tutorials, laboratory practicals, as well as discussions are facilitated as per usual. The thing here is that before students are allowed to return, they need to undergo stringent nucleic acid test and antibody test, which is done over a duration of 2 weeks, to make sure that the students do not actually infect anyone. Because if you think about it, the entire campus have 10,000 over people. All you need is just one single student to actually cause things to go into a haywire state. International students, unfortunately, are not allowed to return back to China at that moment of time. Actually, until now, they have not been given the chance to return just yet because of certain traveling restrictions which are still in place. But the classes still continue as per usual, where we actually have hybrid classes, where the on-site classes still proceed as per usual, and there is actually a a direct link between the lecturer which is presenting at the moment of time to the audience which is online observing and listening in. So this particular arrangement is actually kick-started by our global engagement officers. They actually link up the students with the classes at any given time, and on top of which, this hybrid format actually facilitates students to participate more actively, in the sense that students are able to actually share resources between those on-site and online as well. And despite the pandemic itself, the seminars as well as the conferences still proceed as per usual. We have a total of 800 different academic conferences and forums in 2020 alone. And despite having travel restrictions as well as, controlled environment, all on-site participants are required to actually have health check before they actually are allowed to participate and give their lectures. So students, and it is actually a very good platform where at the very least students do not actually have a problem of finding themselves in a locked up environment, but rather students are able to actually interact and learn in the entire process itself. So virtual assignments and quizzes and virtual class debates, we do actually have those. We continuously still participate and also, motivate students to be more engaged in teaching. And in the case of quizzes and virtual class debates itself, points are being assigned and also awarded for participation. So in this case, students are more willing to actually share their opinion and thoughts about a particular subject matter. So in order to generate this interest, we use different platforms such as Tension Meeting or WOOF Meeting, which is actually the alternative for international people, which is also under the Tension program itself. And also we use other platforms such as WeChat to actually facilitate discussions. Some lecturers also resort to using, social media platforms such as Bilibili, which is the equivalent of TikTok in China itself, where, for instance, a colleague of mine, Professor Liu Chenying, actually shares her lab's discovery as well as literature review on a weekly basis, where this information is then being relayed to students so that they can get a better understanding of the field which is being taught and discussed on. So that is actually what we have done so far to actually facilitate the learning process of students online as well as on-site itself during the pandemic. And now we move towards the graduate students. So for graduate students itself, research is still required to move as per usual. So the discussions between the advisor and the graduate students are done online, totally online, where higher research officers and also the professor themselves will actually move in to actually do the experiments they do the experiments on behalf of these graduate students itself until they return from their sabbatical. So it is actually from the duration of February all the way down to May. The experimental work is mainly done by the PIs as well as the research officers. To ease the pressure and the stress which is actually imposed on the limited amount of manpower which is available, we actually use different platforms to facilitate the experimental work, such as our core facility, where we have different platforms such as the material characterization, microscopy center, the fabrication or microfabrication and nanofabrication facility, and the life sciences research facility. These all are, pay per use, or rather hired per use kind of work, where if, for instance, we have a particular sample, we want them to actually culture and ultimately do different type of assays, we can send these samples directly to these platforms and they will actually perform the experiments on your behalf. And ultimately, the data which is being acquired at the end of the day is being used for analysis as well as final data compilation. We also have collaboration with other institutions such as the Shenzhen Institute of Advanced Technology, SIAT, which is just beside us. They have a few biofoundries which actually facilitates the large-scale production of different genetic constructs and the testing of it during this period. So in this extent itself, we can shorten the workload, we can, not really shorten the amount of time by distributing out the workload which is required for the graduate students' experiments. And the data which has been acquired is then being relayed back to the students where they analyze it and figure out what to do with the set of data. So to reflect on how effective this particular system is, in 2020 alone, despite the pandemic, the academic output of the university is at 12,284 published manuscripts, and which is actually a 55% increase as compared to 2019. Additionally, there's been 629 patents which has been filed and certified during this same period of time. So this is a picture of me and my lab assistant. We are actually conducting the experiments on behalf of the students. As you can see over here on the top corner, you can see that there's actually the expression of fluorescent proteins which has been tested and trialed on, and also the different type of culturomics work which is done during the period where I myself actually did hands-on on behalf of my students. We also have a in situ research analysis where we use big data analysis to understand the disease development across the country and to understand how the COVID spread actually impacts the people around us. And also we look into we actually get students to do large-scale data analysis so they can to sharpen their skill sets when it comes down to returning to work and ultimately working on their research work alone. Furthermore, we actually have a few collaboration with the hospitals where we try to understand the microbiome data, which is generated through patient samples, and that alone actually gives us a lot of data. For instance, on my end, I had my team actually had to handle about, let me see, about 200 to 300 worth data sets which actually came from patients, and ultimately that gave us a better understanding of how disease actually manifests and also spread across Shenzhen. So, the thing is that despite the pandemic outbreak itself, the education system was actually resumed as per usual in February, and students were allowed back in May, where we see the transition from an online course all the way down to a hybrid course, and we are seeing it now in the case where some students are present and some students aren't present on site, they are actually participating online. And research continues unhampered during this period of time, where students do the analysis and the thinking thought process, whereas the PI as well as the research assistant conduct the experiments on behalf of the students until they return. We also have seen an enlisting of different platforms and foundries to facilitate the research work to ease the research load which has been imposed onto the staff as well as the PI. And a lot of work has been realigned to looking into in silico studies such as big data analysis and microbiome analysis. So I do hope that this gives a quick and clear understanding as to the different type of approaches which we have taken to deal with the limitations we found during the pandemic outbreak itself. And despite everything, we have done, I think, fairly well. Students are performing as good as they usually do. And ultimately, they are learning, even though at one period of time, they were not allowed to return. So I do hope this sharing actually gives a certain degree of understanding and also an appreciation on how, given the trying times itself, we still persevere and endure throughout the entire period. And I would like to actually thank the funding agencies for the different type of financial assistance which has been rendered to my team, and this is my team during our last retreat, and of course my thanks to the collaborators in the various institutions, and also I would like to actually give a shout out to Professor Kwan Seng Hao as well as Professor Sylvia for allowing me to actually share my thoughts and also my lecture this very day itself. And thank you for your attention and time. I would actually be happy to take any questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ho, for his insightful sharing on the teaching and research methods during this pandemic era. I think which will be extremely useful for a lot of us researchers and students alike. So here we'd like to open to the floor and to the question and answer. So we have some questions in the chat box ready. So first questions will be from Alan Chong Han Lin. So thank you very much, Dr. Ho, for the interesting presentations. How the online classes are conducted for the students from rural area? Some students from rural area might not be able to have internet access or buying computer for the online classes.
That's a very good question. The thing here is that while students might not have a computer all the time, they do have their handphones, which is actually a portal for them to actually study and also learn from. So we do actually, for those for people in the rural areas itself, we do deliver the worksheets by mail directly to them. And ultimately, they can actually revise at the same time, attend classes via the phone or iPad or whatever gadget they can get their hands on.
Okay, good. So now we have our second questions from the Chong Wen Chan. So is there a significant difference in student learning and performance between the fully online and hybrid classes conducted?
Interestingly, students actually do perform very much, let me put it this way, they do actually perform relatively well in a hybrid class, surprisingly, because the thing is that given the different cultures and the different environment which the students actually have, they kind of actually interact more as compared to when they're in the class itself. So this is something which I find it to be very interesting, because students actually do participate more actively than the usual, where they find the possibility of actually having an interaction online and on site together to be something which is synergistic, I guess. They tend to be much more enthusiastic. That's what I observe.
Thanks for the answer, Dr. Ho. So so we have another questions from Dr. Corinne. So thank you, Dr. Ho, for your interesting presentations. Some say the school fees should be reduced for virtual classes for tertiary education. What's your opinions about this?
School fees should be reduced. Really depends, essentially, because for instance, in China itself, education is actually counted as free or close to free. It's almost like in Malaysia, most of the governmental universities are highly subsidized by the government itself. So in China, universities are actually paid by the government. So students don't really need to pay too much, maybe just a nominal fee itself. So to that extent, I think school fees to be reduced any further kind of actually wouldn't make any difference in this picture. But I would actually say that to a certain degree, while the school, while the classes are conducted online, the facilities as well as the manpower which is used to teach, as well as the staff, is still essentially still requires money to actually push forward. So reducing the school fees might seem to be a potential outlook, but I don't think it's actually something where we can actually say we cut too much out of it, because ultimately, where else would people actually get their salaries as well as the facilities to work on it, work on these things? So this is my two cents thought about this matter. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ho. Okay, so is there any other questions from the audience? We may have time for one last question. Yeah, there's a question from Liu Kian Yu. So how long did it take for your department to get used to the online platforms?
We actually got used to it almost immediately. Thank you for the question. So the only problem which we had initially was actually to decide on which social how do we say, online platforms to use, whether we're using Tencent or are we using WeChat. But aside from that, we didn't have much of any issues, because students are willing to actually get directly involved very quickly and very enthusiastically. Yes. So yes, it kind of, we took about 1 week to set up, and that's about it. So all of us were actually pretty much running through the classes online as well. So it's not a big issue. Thanks for the question.
Yep, thanks for the whole. So I think this information and experience will really help us, especially the academicians, on how we plan for our futures classes during these pandemic areas. So I'd like to thank again Dr. Ho for your talks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll move on to our next speaker. So we'd like to invite Dr. Luis S. Cisternas from University of Antofagasta, Chile, to speak on the teaching and research at the University of Antofagasta during the COVID-19 pandemic. So allow me to read a short biography of Dr. Luis. So Professor Luis Cisternas actually joined the Department of Mineral Processing and Chemical Engineering for the University of Antofagasta in 1988 as assistant professor, wherein in 2021 he was appointed a professor. So Professor Cisternas' principal research interest is the use of a system approach to solving problems in mineral processing. In particular, his research combines the development of systematic computer-aided methods and tools and experimental works for solving problems in the mining industries, which can be classified in terms of the following topics: modeling and optimizations, design and analysis of minerals processes, water resources, critical material and circular economy. So Professor Cisternas has published more than 140 peer-reviewed journal articles, more than 150 conference papers, and more than 30 books, chapters, 5 books, and has made more than 10 oral presentations as an invited presenters. So without further ado, let's welcome the talk by Professor Cisternas.
Hello, everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Luis Cisternas. I work at the University of Antofagasta in Chile. First, I want to thank to the organizer of this seminar for inviting me and give me the opportunity to share our experience on research and teaching when the COVID pandemic arrived to Chile and how we manage these problems, at least from my experience. It was difficult for me to prepare this talk because it's not the topic that I used to talk about in the seminar. And I need to think what I'm going to say, and I think that I had to give a little explanation about Chile so you can understand the situation here. Also, I will give a little description about the situation of the COVID pandemic in Chile. And I will talk in general about the teachings. And then I will focus on what we did in my research group at the university to be able to continue our activity in this situation. First, I had to tell you that the Chileans like to shake hands. We also like to kiss when we say hello. And we like give hug. We like also be together. And all these situations change because of the pandemic. Chile is a very long and thin country. The length of Chile is over 4,000 kilometers, and the width is the maximum width is around 400 kilometers. We speak Spanish, and our population is 18 millions, and our gross domestic product per capita is around $23,000. Because we're very long, the weather condition is different in the north than in the south. And in the north, we have a desert. It's the dry desert in the world. There are years that we don't have any rain at all. And in the south, it changes a lot. There is rain. We have several lakes in the south. Also, we have two mountains. We have the Coast Mountain that is near to the ocean, and we have the Andes Mountain. And so this different in the altitude also give different in the weather, and the weather affect the activity that we have in different part of the country. In the north, where I am in Antofagasta, there are several mining activity. There are copper mine, molybdenum, gold. We have also sodium nitrate and lithium product and iodine. This come from Salt Lake. The main activity of the country, I will say that the more important from the economic point of view is the mine activity and the copper production. We are the first world copper producer and also we're the first in iodine and natural sodium nitrate. We also produce lithium and molybdenum. We're the second one in the world. other activity important in the north is the astronomic activity, because we have very clear sky. There are a lot of astronomic infrastructure. In the south, there is salmon production, wine, fruit, and in the north, we also have in the last 10 years solar energy, because we have very high solar radiation, actually the highest in the world. So in the last 10 years, we start to increase a lot of this energy production from solar energy. Now let's talk a little about the COVID and Chile. The Chile government have 3 strategies for the COVID. First, they have this called step-by-step plan that is applied to each municipality. They have a social protection plan and the vaccination plan. The step-by-step plan has 5 steps. The first one is the quarantine, so only the essential face-to-face activity are allowed. And then this move to step 5, where we are full open. You can see here the situation in the north of Chile. So most of the municipalities are in step 3 or 4. That means that several activities are allowed, but not all of them. Especially activity where there are a lot of people together are not allowed. If you are in step 1 or 2, people cannot move to other places. They have to stay in the municipality where they live. But in the step 3 or 4 and 5, you're allowed to travel to other places. I can tell you now that this is a very difficult situation if we compare what we have last year, and I will say the first 6 months of this year. We have a lot of travel problems, and we were in quarantine, a very, very long quarantine in several cities. And it was a curfew in the night for more than 1 year, so we cannot go outside in the night. The border was closed, so travel was not allowed for most of the people. So now we are in a very better situation than we were in the past. The second strategy is the social protection plan. We have now an emergency family income. This family income is between $200 and $600 per month for each family, if the income of the family is less than $1,000. There is also a employment protection law, and there are several credits for a small business, and also for the employment. There is the government pay the employment for a small business. When we were in quarantine, it was also food distribution. Here in this photo is the president of the country that start to this program for food distribution. So this was very important, especially in the last year and the first 6 months of this year. all this social protection program was very important because most of the people cannot work. Now, still there is this employment system, still this the emergency family income, but this will finish the next month. The Chile also we have a very good plan for the vaccination. The government bought 35 million doses of vaccine and the different kind of vaccine. We can see here that now we have more than 100 vaccine doses per 100 people. So most of the people already have 2 doses and some of them have 3. 90% of the population have 2 doses. And you can see where the second in the world, the country that had more vaccine doses is United Arab Emirates. So we have a very good plan of vaccination, and this has helped us now to have to be in better condition. However, if we see the death, the cumulative death per million people, Chile was around with 2,000 deaths. And if we compare with the other country, this is not a very good number, but of course there are countries that are worse in this situation, but there are a lot of other countries that had better number in this situation. We have 3 COVID wave. You can see here in this graph, this is the number of cases each day. In the first wave, we have around, the maximum value was around 7,000 cases, and we have almost 200 deaths per day. In the second wave, we reach almost 9,000 cases, but the death per day, the maximum was about 140 cases. And we are now in the third COVID wave, and you can see here that the deaths have decreased because of the vaccination program. So this now allows us to have more activity, and we will start the activity, the lecture at the university face-to-face very soon. So let's talk a little about the University of Antofagasta. It's a small university, about 700 students. We have activity in several areas. I personally work in the Faculty of Engineering. We have mechanical, electrical, electronic, mine, industrial, and mineral processing engineering program. And I work in the mineral processing area. So to be able to have the lectures, we need to do, the university has to apply several changes. The first problem was that not all the students have internet. So the university bought internet equipment for the student. So in that way, all the students now have access to internet. A second problem was that we don't have the regulation. So regulation for online class and online student evaluation was also necessary to develop. We use three software for this. We use Moodle for the minister system, where we put the homework, give our slide that we present in the lectures, and there is a video for the student. All of this is in Moodle. We also the student can give us the homework to this system. For the teaching, for the lecture, I personally use Zoom. But if other professors use Teams, especially if there are more collaborative activity, because it's more easy to share documents and work in the same document together. Another thing that was necessary to do was to give course to the professors and course to the student to learn how to have teaching activity online. Also, it was a problem with the library to give access to the student to the library. So we need to implement modification in our library system. Now this system is working, and in general, I don't have any problems with the student in my lectures. There is a system that is monitoring the data, and we can see the result of apply of this system in our lectures. And there are some problems with the lab, but now the lab activities are allowed at the university. Only the lectures are online. I want to now talk a little about the research activity in my group. Was something difficult to do at the beginning. We need to think what we're going to do, and we thought that the more important thing was to rethink the research design. So what to rethink about what, where, when we're going to do the research. So here are a few things that we do. First, we take the research question and we prioritize them. So for each student, I was talking with the student which research question can be solved more easily, or which one can be analyzed or get the answers to that with a very low activity in the lab. We also think about if we can reformulate this research question for the to try to avoid to go to the lab. And so that's something that we talk at the beginning with the students. We take the projects that they have and try to think about the research question that they have. A second thing was to see where we can do this, to think what can be done at home, what we can do online. For example, all our meetings were online with the students to discuss the research. Also, we analyze which other activity that require more laboratory times, and how many people are necessary to carry out the experiments. With this, we try to reformulate our research designs. In tools and methods, we thought if we can apply experimental design that can help to reduce the experimental time. We also thought if there is another method that we can apply to solve our problem. What computer ID tool can be applied so we can do that at home. And if we can reduce the number of repetitions. So we can redesign the experimental design so we can have less repetitions. After we do the experimental lab, we also thought what we can do about the methods of analysis of the results. We can, what tools are available for a small sample? If we combine experimental methods with the computer tools, if we combine our data with data from the literature. And finally, about the validation, we also thought if we can validate our result using data from the literature, or if we can apply modeling for validation. So, how I mentioned, my research activity is related to mineral processing. I work in flotation, and flotation is a separation system that is multi-phase because there is gas, water, liquid, and solid in the system. Also, it's a multi-component problem, but it's also multi-scale. So there are important things that happen in the planning system, other at the plant level, other problems are important at the unit operation levels, and some of them are important at the molecular levels. And we do some research at several levels also. And we were able to apply some computer tools for different levels. For example, we study the absorption of the collector on the surface of minerals using some experiment, but we also apply molecular modeling to validate our results if our experimental results are agreed with the molecular modeling. At the plant or unit operation level, we apply responsive software methodology together with some artificial intelligence method to be able to reduce the number of experiments and get the result that we're gonna to solve our problems. And we also work in the plant design to develop plant design tools and plant design analysis, and we apply optimization, some artificial intelligence tool like vector machine for the classification of different situations that can happen in the plant. And we also apply global sensitivity analysis to identify critical situations. So with this, I will finish my presentation. I hope that we can soon have our normal life back, and we also can have our activity at the university so we can do better teaching and better research. But we also have learned from this experience, and we think that we will apply some of this experience in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Prof. Luis, for his wonderful insights also, and his experience in facing those adversaries during the pandemic and how to overcome them. So now I'd like to open to the floor for question and answer. Do you have any questions for Professor Luis?
Yes, Dr. Lewis, it's Howie here. Thanks very much for sharing your experiences in Chile. We know that Chile has one of the highest vaccination rates, one of the most successful vaccination rollouts. But what I really want to know, Dr. Lewis, is basically how has COVID changed? How has COVID changed the perception on modeling and simulation work? Because I mean, before COVID, there's a school of thought where people prefer real experimentation as opposed to simulation and modeling. But has that perception changed because we're stuck at home? Then people have more time and they can experiment with modeling and software. Has people changed their perception on that modeling and simulation can actually bring value to much more value to research than was thought of, Dr. Lewis? If you can enlighten us, please. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Well, it's difficult to say for the perception in Chile in general. In our group, we have increased the use of computer AI tools in our research, but we were doing that also before the pandemics. But we increase now the use of this tool because it's easy to do it from home, and we have found that it can be very useful. For example, in the past we don't use the molecular modeling, so this was something new that we apply, and we have applied that to several projects and with very good result to combine and validate our experiment. So in that way, we are doing less experiment and replacing some of the experimental activity with this simulation. Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Prof. Luis, for your answers. So again, we'll have another question from the chats by Yapli Kent. So thank you, Prof. Luis, for the presentations. So his question is, how do you manage the research activities or the laboratory works of a big research team under the pandemic situation in Chile? How do you ensure the progress of the postgraduate students?
Well, first, our program, our PhD program, have about 27 students. So it's not a big program. We contact each student to know the problem that they have, if they have a computer or not at home, and to be able to provide the help that they need to work in the research. And we check all the objectives and the state are doing and reprogramming the activity so we can move on with the project. So some of the students start to write the papers that if they have enough data. Others go to the lab, but we have a system where the student can make a reservation for the use of the lab. We also give some restriction the number of hours they can be in the lab, so other students can go and share the equipment. And in that way, we try to reduce the effect of the COVID and the problem that we have. But it's a difficult situation. It's not an easy problem to solve. And but for example, the number of publications in the last year increases because the students had more time for write, and but now because they didn't spend enough time in the lab. Now I think that we will have a different situation in the next year. So that's it. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for the answers, Prof. Luis. So I think we have time for one more last question from Dr. Alessandro Navarra. So hi, Luis. Northern Chile has a strategic advantage for mining-related research by being geographically close to various scales of mining. This generally helps inform what are valid research problems and directions. How has the pandemic affected the interactions with local mining operations and other industrial research partners?
The mining operation was considered a critical activity in Chile, so they were allowed to work, and but they had to reduce the number of people that was in the working, so it increased the work that can be done by internet, because plant can be operated from long distance now through internet. So, for example, several of the plants that are in Antofagasta that are operated from Santiago is about more than 1,000 kilometers from distance. So they found some way to manage that, and then they keep the production. And but for example, a new project that was stopped. So they cannot start new project or new improvement in the plant. They just keep the operation during that time. And because of the mine activity is important for the Chilean, they continue working all this time. They have several regulations in the number of people that can be in the office and that kind of things. And so I can say that in general, the mine operation continue working all this time without reduction in the production, but without starting new projects.
Yep, thanks, Prof. Luis, for his insightful answers. So right now we need to move on to our next speaker. So thanks, Prof. Luis, again for your insightful talks to us. Thank you. So okay, we'll conclude our series of talk for these sessions by inviting Dr. Yusuf Gobani from Luleå University of Technology, Sweden, who will be speaking on COVID-19 pandemic significance for higher education in Sweden, challenges and possible future opportunities. So a short introduction for Dr. Yusuf Gobani. So he received his master's degree in mineral processing and extractive metallurgy from University of Tehran, Iran in 2005, and a PhD degree in chemical engineering, biohydrometallurgy from University of Cape Town, South Africa in 2012. He has more than 16 years of experience in research, teaching, and industrial work in the field of sustainable supply of high-tech and critical raw materials, global supply chains, environmental management, circular economy, and the climate gains with resource efficiency at different university and industrial R&I centers worldwide. So Dr. Yusuf Gobani, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your kind introduction. I hope everyone heard me clearly.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you. And my talk for this very interesting conference would be the latest study in Sweden about the effect of the COVID pandemic on higher education. And my talk will be practically based on the two reports released by Swedish Higher Education Authority, one in mid-pandemic in March, 1st of March, and then they completed the report and released the second one on April 1st. So the result is based on this official report I have received from Higher Education Authority, and you will see series of the similar style figures. And the reason for that, due to the the confidentiality, I didn't have right to redraw the graph, so I have just presented as they have offered. So if you see the similar graph, please excuse me for that. In terms of the general effect of the pandemic, we know the world are more connected than ever. And if the problem happens in one part of the world, definitely the rest of us, we are not going to stay safe, and we will be affected somehow. And the COVID pandemic, as a recent incident, has clearly shown that. Similar to the other part of the society, universities also has been significantly affected. Even this kind of the conference is a platform to share what we have learned so far, but the long-term consequence of the pandemic in higher education still requires to be further actually data gathering, investigation, and then we can get a clear image. But as well said with many people before, similar to the quote I have here from Einstein, in the midst of every crisis lies a great opportunity, and we should actually learn the good lesson and what we can actually use as a platform, as a lesson from this global pandemic in order to have more effective higher education system nationwide and globally. These two reports I just mentioned, released in March and April, was conducted based on the survey. They selected 7 higher education institutes in Sweden, namely Chalmers University and the rest, the Karoline Institutes and Luleå University and Modern University, Stockholm University, and Uppsala. They have selected in the way not only from the field of the subject, but also geographically they cover entire country. And in this question survey, there was 21 multiple choice question and 1 open-end question. And in total, 1,356 responses have been received regarding each individual question. And the interpretation of the result was categorized based on the 5 following sections. How remote work and consequence of how remote work has been affected our research, and also the consequence of the pandemic on data collection, funding, publication, and recruitment of the new staff member and student. And also how people spend their time on research and continuous development career. And also the other aspect was looking at the like the effect on their current cooperation or collaboration, and also networking. And then finally, also different type of the online meeting. They looked at that either is the administration meeting, a student and academic meeting, or it's a conference meeting. How this kind of the meeting will affect being online and being physical. Regarding the effect on the research, here you can see the result. They have conducted about the percentage of the work time has been done remotely during the average week in this time, and total of the 1,344 response has been collected. As you can see, almost like the half indicated that they do much of their work remotely, and it's kind of the common in many different subjects. They had a different result, but it's for humanity and fine art and social science, for them it was not that problematic, and they prefer actually work. And perhaps the most like the affected part, I would say, was those they have a practical lab, of which I will discuss it later. And the majority of the response also was indicating that it has been worse to supervisor student. That was perhaps different. And one interesting result also they noticed, response from a woman and the man academic and student, they were different. And apparently most remote work for women in humanity and fine art and social science, they prefer to work from home. And that was also a very interesting result to see that. The other question aligned the research was how well has research worked when working remotely? And they indicated that the negative aspect somehow has been more dominated. 54% saying that research remotely is worse or much worse compared to the 46% they indicated they have not seen significant differences. It was like almost a small amount of the differences they have been noticed. And again, here also there is slightly differences between different field of the discipline, and also different answer if the responder is the woman or man. And one of the other questions also was how well has supervision of the doctorate student worked during that pandemic? And from the 861 response received, 57% saying that it has been worse or even close to the worst, and they have complained about that. And but at the same time, still a significant number of the people, 43%, indicating that there was no major differences. Again, the answer goes which subject you're supervising, and that is a significant like the factor in this answer. And there are also certain differences between the field of the research, but also between the women and the men. They were actually participating in this study. And from 6 out of the 10 fields that remote supervision is absolutely worse, and we need kind of the physical interaction. Other question they have looked at that, looking at the colleague, like the relationship with your colleague and interaction with your colleagues, either is the colleague academic or could be administrative colleague as well. Here also there was like 1,029 people have been actually participating, and majority, again 53 people, indicating that it has been worked worse, and 47 people have not seen significant differences. There are certain differences between the field of the studies, but not significant between the women and men participated in these studies. In terms of the effect of the pandemic on data collection, funding, publication, and recruiting the new member, from the 1,145 answer, almost majority, 71%, saying that it has been negatively impacted their data collection. And just under a third person, the third indicating that data collection has not been impacted, or some cases also for them was easy because they could actually remotely contact other people in the rest of the world. And they also, there was no great differences between the field of the study in that specific aspect. Having said that, data collection has been impacted mostly negatively in the field of the medical science and engineering. And as I said, this kind of the field requires lab and physical and wet lab or the field work in order to get the required data. So these are perhaps the people with the significant need for the wet lab. They were more affected in terms of the data collection. In terms of the external research funding, again, from the 840%, you can see that majority of the people indicating that there was no significant differences, but still in average up to like the 20% saying that yes, there was differences. But also you can see again, even there's no significant in these cases between the answer you receive from the female and the male participant, but the subject also was a matter in this question. Other question also regarding the funding, 46% indicated that less research fund from their current research funding, because you have to use this funding, otherwise it's kind of the wasted, mainly when it's the EU funding or EIT funding, either you have to return it back, or it's a national fund, you have to return it back, or you have a report how you have used that. And this question was addressing that, how you were successful using your allocated funding in your current project. And 46% indicated that they have used the less fund, and most of the reason could be like there was no physical traveling, because traveling also was part of the actually the expenses they could have if there was no like the incident like the COVID pandemic. But some people, like the 80%, spend it more research funding. Perhaps that could be like they have to purchase perhaps the many software for their group, or the hardware like the PC, etc., for a student in case they don't have like these devices. But in Sweden, in general, there's no problem for people not having like the access for the requirement. Like the devices in their studies, but still a researcher might require specific, like if you're working at home, sometimes you can't stay on your laptop for a while, you have to have a big screen to avoid the possible health problem for your eyes. That kind of the hardware might also would have been added for their cost. The other question regarding the data collection, funding and publication, they looked at them specifically for publication, and 7 from the 10 indicated that not significant changes. In some cases, people have used, as Louis previously indicated, that some people use this staying at home a great opportunity, work with their previous like the data or the paper they were planning to publish. It was a great opportunity. So in some cases had a positive impact in the rate of the publication they have had. Since in Sweden also, when you have a PhD studies, the majority is the paper-based PhD, and you have to have minimum of the 3-4 papers. So for them also, in most cases, they see it positive, but surprisingly, majority indicated that there was no fundamental differences in their routine rate of the publication. In terms of the recruiting the new member, in terms of the PhD student and also the other research assistants or the new academic member, 49%, almost like the kind of the half-half response have been received. 49% indicated that they had more difficulties, and most of the difficulties goes back to the people coming from overseas, because in our university specifically we have more than 50 different nationality. If you employ the new PhD student, they getting the visa in this global pandemic, traveling, all of them were completely affected, and that was making problem slightly hard to get a student come and start on time. But the large percentage, actually, as you can see, negative response came from the response in the natural science. So the discipline also was playing the key role. And as I said, this kind of study based on some data, but further data requires we generalize something. But what I'm presenting is based on the data have been gathered so far. In terms of the question which was addressing to what degree doctoral students were able to complete their study according to their work plan, and from 81 people response, mainly the supervisor and the PhD student, they said that doctoral studies taking longer time than they have already planned. And supervisor also mainly in the field of the medical and health science and natural science were most affected part, and their response were negative. And as I said, this is directly related to their nature of the research they're doing and the physical lab they should actually have access. Even by saying that Sweden had a unique approaches globally, and we didn't have a single day of the actually close of the school for the kids, but university also started closing in the at least like it was the past September, they started actually closing very late than other universities. So with those different approaches also we can see the more or less the similar result globally as well. The other question they were looking at that, how has the amount of the time for research changes, considering the allocated time, normally you do the certain type of the research has changed, you need more time, less time, and we can see 42% using much time on research as before a pandemic, and 23 says using more time, and some of them even say less time. So the answer was rather confusing, and the conclusion was, again, it depends on the subject, and also somehow the university itself also plays the role in terms of the facility and the ratio of the staff member to the allocated job is matters. So those also were kind of the key factor giving kind of the strange answer to this specific question. The other question was how has the amount of the time you research changed during the pandemic by categorizing the main employment category and also the higher education institutes, and they see the differences, as you can see, in different university also, because while they following the protocol they were receiving from the authority, but each state also has own unique geographical and also a different climate condition. Like in northern Sweden is very cold, and when we moving down has different styles. So the protocol is slightly could be different, and that also shows the significant like the changes comparing different institutes location. And the other question they were looking at that was like their assessment of the continuous development or career development as mainly for the young researcher, and they found there was an opportunity, or they had less opportunity to further develop their professional life. And as you can see, 47% of the people have not noticed any impact, but at the same time 40% indicated that the career development has not worked well for them. But again, 14% also see this as a positive aspect, and they had a good opportunity to further. And mainly, like in the case of myself, my PhD student had opportunity, instead of having physical courses, they had a couple of the online courses, and they actually accelerated the required courses for their studies, and they had extra time also to take some kind of the other career development courses parallel to other compulsory courses they have to taking. And the other question were about the, again, career development, by this time also divided by the main employment category. Here also employees with the career development position were most likely to respond to this question. And we can see 60% like of women, and the 56 of the men, they respond for that. And we can see again, changes based on the person participated is a female or male. They have different answers, and also we can see different perspective in terms of the level of the position they have. If they are a senior lecturer, if they are a professor, if they are a researcher, and as you can see, mainly the professor, they had less affected in this specific one, because majority of the lecturer in Sweden normally arrange with the senior lecturer and also the PhD student, and professor mainly act as a course leader. So for them, perhaps it was not that significant changes in their routine, the duties and responsibilities. And the other thing in terms of the effect of the research on collaboration was asking to what degree have you needed to change your research as a consequence of the pandemic. And as we can see, 43% had to make few changes, and for 33% the pandemic has had no impact, and under 25% had to make in some cases major and minor changes for their and the current approaches or planned work for their research. And also the funding bodies in Sweden and also the educational bodies immediately gave flexibility for all of us, like we had the right to completely change our educational approach. Like if you had a written exam, we had the right to have it oral exam. So they immediately coped with the problem. And in terms of the research also, if you had kind of the allocated money for traveling or the physical lab, you could actually arrange with your funding body and use it in the other activity which requires less physical interaction. So that kind of the collaboration between the research bodies and the educational authorities and our administration was very helpful to cope with that. But at the same time, in some cases, it's not possible, and you can see still some people have been affected negatively. And the other question was about the international collaboration. As you can see, 12% indicated practically their relationship came to end. But at the same time, 48% slightly see the decline in their relationship. 41% was completely neutral, and they haven't seen any significant impact. Engineering and technology were perhaps the most likely to respond negatively, and that goes back like the most of the engineering funding and the collaboration requires like joint field trip, joint like kind of this kind of the activity, and it was completely blocked during the time of the pandemic. And they were most likely get kind of the negative impact for their further international collaboration development. And the other question with regard to the collaboration was asking how has your collaboration with parties outside the higher education been actually impacted. And as you can see, for engineering, over 75% collaboration with parties outside the higher education has practically come to end. Most of the like in our cases, most of the mining completely closed outside visiting, and you can't actually further initiate your collaboration with the industry if you don't have a regular physical visit, which we often do that at least once a month. We had a physical interaction, meeting each other, and that was completely closed because due to the pandemic, they were not accepting any visitor from like the university or outside their company. The other aspect were investigated in this research, the online meeting and online tools. If you use it for the conference, if you're using for teaching, workshop, and the type of the users we were having from this online, how those tasks were affected. If you're using online, like for joint meeting, lecture, seminar, workshop, as you can see, the respondents were most satisfied with online meeting and online seminar, and they were less satisfied with online conferences. And also, you can see the female respondents were more positive to online meeting than male responding. That was also very interesting. That one is still, I personally read the two reports in detail. I couldn't find a significant reason behind that, but it still was very interesting to see the significant differences between the female and the male response for this specific question. In conclusion, I would say from this specific report for the case of the Sweden, teaching taking more time in connection with the transition to the remote and online teaching. Data collection has become more difficult or not possible to collect as we already planned. The use of the external research funding has decreased in some cases nearly half. Many also pointed to sitting at home is not that productive because not everyone has a good like the environment and the facilities to use as an office space. And also relatively, as I said, the satisfaction were for the online meeting, but people were complaining about the conferences, because conferences is not just a meeting, like kind of the online meeting, but physically you interact, have a like the join coffee, join glass of the wine. All those aspects help you to accelerate your networking during the conferences, which in the online meeting you completely missing that. But I would also like to say that all those results presented with other colleagues also, it's absolutely great and insightful information, but only the future can show the degree to which the observed changes has kind of the long-term and permanent effect. And we have to further actually wait and gather more data to get the clear images. But as a like kind of the conclusion for engineering, as I said, most of the time the discipline like medical science and engineering, they require more wet lab. One of the solution might be helpful, not completely eliminate the wet lab, but somehow replace it partially, would be using the dry lab approaches, moving toward the digital twin and simulation-based learning or gamification might be one couple of the solution to partially replace that. But as I said, there will be no 100% replacement of the wet lab with the dry lab and simulated environment, but they could actually help mainly in the field of the mining. That would be really good because we can generate the right game, which one of my PhD students actually works on that for advanced training. We found it significantly could help for online teaching, and in the places like you can't go and have for the like you have some classes training in the remote area, you can do it by using this kind of the technique and tools. So I'm just going to close my talk here and leave you with the image from the northern light in our cities. And I thank you, organizer, for giving this opportunity for me. So if there's any question, I would be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Yusuf, again for his insightful sharing on the impacts of the pandemics on the academicians at Sweden itself. So it's pretty interesting to see some of the results there, especially on the different responses between male and female, and also the researchers from different backgrounds, the engineering and technology, as well as the arts and humanities. Okay, so I would like to again open the floor for question and answer. Do you have any questions for Dr. Yusuf? Yep. So we have one question from Dr. Sweet Siu Hong. So thank you, Prof. Yusuf, for the presentations. It's no doubt that the research data collection has been seriously affected by the COVID pandemic. As a supervisor, I would like to know what are the approaches that you can take to overcome such problems faced by your research team?
In terms of the data gathering, as I said, the answer depends on the type of the research we're doing. Sometimes you have to have physical tests in order to actually like get that required data. but sometimes also being in Sweden, and we have very close relationship with neighboring countries. And in terms of the data, when we're looking at that, there is a kind of the most of the document and official written report is publicly available. So in our cases, we could actually get from the Norway, Finland, or Denmark, that actually help if we have some kind of the test we were trying to run. If our lab were closed, we could actually use their lab to get that data. But generally, it was really hard. And in some cases also, I would actually encourage we should perhaps do that. And it goes back to the question how we were asking Louis also, the people perspective about the simulation modeling. I think in our field, we are behind the many other fields in terms of the data-driven approach, moving toward the dry lab approaches. So if we have that kind of the data bank built and available for everyone, we might actually come up with kind of the solution, not 100% depend on the physical data. And even in most cases, physical data in our field, it's not actually practically useful to generalize something. So I think building kind of the nationwide, global-wide data in our field could be right way for further research generation. And this pandemic have shown the significant role of the data and the smart data bank in our field, and freely available for all the researcher could play a significant role, if I have answered your question.
Yeah, thanks to Yusuf. So we have a second question from Natasha Yasmin. Thank you, Prof. Yusuf, for the presentations. I'd like to ask if there's any impact on the policy based on the results from these surveys.
Absolutely, yeah. In Sweden, they have more dynamic system. They always do it based on the even we have physically lifted all the restriction from end of the September this year, but the situation is based on the ongoing studies and report like this. If they see the significant negative effect on the efficiency, they immediately reverse the situation. They get the other approaches. So they are very productive in this manner, and there is a very the highly trust between the authority and the nation, and the university also part of the the nation. There is absolutely kind of the high level trust, and they have a very the bridging smart bridging and communication system. And this kind of the study conducted with the higher education immediately reflects, and the politician make the revision and the modification of their current policy as the research goes. And this research is a stepwise report. 2 of the report has released, and the other one will be released very soon.
Yep, thanks, Dr. Yusuf, for your answers again. So I think with that, we'd like to thank Dr. Yusuf for his, again, great insight on his sharing on the pandemic situations in Sweden.
Yeah, thank you, and the rest of your organizer group for this great opportunity you have provided. It's really great that you have brought the people from different countries to share experiences.
Yeah.
For me, listening for all the presenters was a great learning day. Thank you, every one of you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you to all our presenters for their illuminating presentations and generous sharing. Please join us again tomorrow for our second session at the same time. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone. See you guys tomorrow again. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
I'm a giant. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance. tempting fate. Now's our time and we won't hesitate.